Welcome to Study Simple CBSE. Today let's look at the line by line explanation of the chapter Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom of Class 10th English. If you're watching this video for the first time, please consider subscribing. Okay, so now let's move on. Nelson Mandela was the first black president of South Africa. This chapter is an extract from his book Long Walk to Freedom. In this book, he talks about his journey of how he became a freedom fighter, his struggles, and he is also paying tribute to other freedom fighters who were responsible for this beautiful freedom. 10th May dawned bright and clear. Dawned means began, so the day began very bright and clear. And why is 10th May special? It is special because on this day the inaugural ceremony was going to take place. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by the dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. So he's saying that for the past few days, before 10th May, he had been pleasantly besieged. Besieged means surrounded by people, like dignitaries and world leaders. Dignitaries are the people of great importance, maybe leaders from other countries. So many world leaders came to meet Nelson Mandela to give their best wishes before the inauguration. Nelson Mandela was feeling very happy since it was one of the best days of his life and the most important day of his life. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So until now there had not been such big gatherings. So he's saying for the first time so many leaders from all around the world are gathering on the South African soil. So leaders from all around the world would just gather here to take part in the inaugural ceremony. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater found by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. So he's saying that the ceremonies took place in a sandstone amphitheater. Amphitheater is an open theater or an open place made up of sandstone. So sandstone is a rock which is usually red or brown in color. He's saying that this amphitheater is located in Pretoria. Pretoria is the capital of South Africa. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy. So what is a decade? A decade is a span of 10 years. He's saying that for many years together, this had been the seat of white supremacy. So white supremacy means that the white people had ruled here and they had the upper hand over all the other races. So that is the reason they had been saying that this is the seat of white supremacy. And now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations. So he's saying that this is now a rainbow gathering since people from different caste, creed and from different countries are gathering in this beautiful ceremony. And for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So he's saying that there is going to be a beautiful gathering here for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So a non-racial government which is democratic is going to be installed in South Africa with Mandela being the president. And what do you mean by non-racial government? It's a government in which people are not going to be discriminated on the basis of their color or on the basis of their race. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani. So he's saying that on this beautiful autumn day, he was also accompanied with his daughter Zenani. On the podium, Mr. D. Clerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. So he's saying that Mr. D. Clerk took his oath as the second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. So first, Mr. D. Clerk was sworn in as the second deputy president, and then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the republic and its people. So he says that when it was his turn, he pledged, which means he promised to obey and uphold the constitution and also to completely devote himself to the well-being of the people and the republic. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said, today all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. In his speech, he says that all of us are gathered here for a common purpose. and that purpose was to grant or give honor to this newborn liberty. Liberty means the freedom from the white rule. And now they're forming their own government. So that is the reason he's saying that all of them had gathered here to honor the newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. So, what is the extraordinary human disaster that they went through? That is the oppression of the blacks by the whites. They had not even been given the basic needs, and this lasted for almost 300 years. They are free now, and he's saying that all of humanity will be very proud of the society since they overcame the racial discrimination which was being followed in South Africa. So we who were outlaws not so long ago. So he's calling himself as outlaws. He's saying this because the blacks were not given any kind of protection from the white government. That is the reason he's calling himself as outlaws. He's saying that the people who are treated as outlaws have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. So now he's saying that the blacks have been given the special opportunity to be the hosts of the world, especially on their own soil. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, peace, and for human dignity. So, in his speech, Nelson Mandela is thanking the leaders of the other countries to have joined them in this beautiful ceremony in which they are celebrating the liberty over the white rule. He's saying that this is an achievement since with this it is a step for a society with no discrimination on the basis of race. So we have at last achieved our political emancipation. So what is emancipation? It is basically the liberty for social, political and economical. So they can form their own group and making their own rules according to their wish. He says that they have achieved their political emancipation at last. We pledge ourselves to liberate all of our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. So he vows that he will liberate all the people from the continuing bondage of poverty. Bondage of poverty means the people who have bonded to being poor. And what is deprivation? Deprivation means that they do not get any benefits at all. He's saying that that will be taken care of and no other suffering, gender or other discrimination will be done in South Africa. Never, never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again gain experience the oppression of one by another. So he's saying that the people of this land will never again experience the oppression. What is oppression? Oppression means the cruel or unjust treatment, especially because of exercising their authority. So the whites oppressed the blacks here in South Africa for almost 300 years. He's saying that this will never happen again. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. He's saying that the sun shall never set on this human achievement. And what is this human achievement? It is removing the oppression of the whites over the blacks and ending the apartheid or the racial discrimination which was followed in South Africa. Let freedom reign, God bless Africa. So he's saying that this freedom will continue on and he wants the blessings of the God for his people. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. So, just after a few moments of his speech, there was a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers. So, he's saying that they formed perfect formations or beautiful designs in the sky, and his eyes were in awe for the spectacular array. His eyes were in awe because of the pilots of the jets and helicopters, because they had been forming such beautiful designs and perfect formation. It shows the country's respect towards the democracy. So the South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers were so impressive that they lifted all our eyes in awe. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. So, after the amazing show, the highest generals or the leaders of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests were bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by. Days gone by means that the bad days in South Africa when there was racial discrimination and from the war or everything, saluted Mandela and pledged their loyalty towards him and the nation. So they saluted and pledged that they would be loyal to the country. So he's saying that I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. So he also remembers that not so many years ago, during the years of their apartheid or the racial discrimination, these people who were saluting him now, since he is the president, would have arrested him. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. So he's saying that the show ended when a chevron of Impala jets formed a chevron. Chevron means a V shape. So these jets left a smoke trail. Trail means path of black, red, blue, green, and gold, which were the colors of the new South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of white singing Nosi Sikilel E Africa and black singing Die Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. So he's saying that he remembers this day by the two national anthems of South Africa playing, with one for the whites and one for the blacks. Nosi Sikilel E Africa for the whites and Die Stem for the blacks. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. So he's saying that on that day the blacks and the whites did not know the wordings of each other's songs because they hated each other, although they would soon know the words by heart. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. Overwhelmed means being very happy. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. So he's saying that even before he was born, the white-skinned people started their domination over the black people or the darker-skinned people and depriving them of their basic needs. So he's saying that the structure or the system created by the whites was one of the most harshest and most inhuman societies that the world has ever seen. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system has been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognizes the rights and freedoms of all peoples regardless of the color of their skin. So he's saying that this kind of system was formed in the first decade of the 20th century. And now he's saying that his own 8th decade as a man, 8th decade means he's 80 years old, and now when he's 80 years old, he has been able to successfully overturn this racial discrimination forever and replace it by the one that is recognized the rights and freedoms of all the peoples, regardless of the color of their skin.